Okay, I think we are live. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Today we're going to cover one of the important wealth topics, which is called caring for your legacy. So today is July 14th, and my name is Keeley Simpson. I'm a portfolio manager and senior wealth advisor here in Toronto, Ontario. A little bit about myself. I've been working with BMO Nesbitt Burns now for 15 years. So time flies when you're having fun. I have a family here in Toronto. I have 4 kids. My oldest is 4.5 and my youngest is 4.5 months old. So we have a very busy household over here. And of course, also I can't forget my dogs. I have two dogs as well. I've been working with BMO for a long time now, and I've seen many different things over the years. I work with a team here in Toronto. My business partner's name is Lee Rohrbeck, and we have a team of 2 assistants that work with us and help support our business, and their names are Lydia and Edward. So that's just a little bit about me personally and professionally. So today we're going to start I'll just start delving into our presentation here. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I'll get to them as I can. If there's anything that you have, a follow-up question on one of the slides, or you want to delve deeper on anything, then, please let me know, and I'm happy to try and answer them as I go along in the presentation today. So, what I thought I would focus on today is that, women have obviously made incredible strides with their, both professional and personal lives in the last half century, basically. Yet there's still a lot of personal issues and challenges that still remain for women when it comes to money and managing money. Between juggling work commitments, taking care of families, whether that's young kids or the sandwich generation where you're taking care of your parents at the same time. It's when do you have any time left to focus on any of your financial goals? What I hear from a lot of my clients, whether they're retired or they're working right now, is that it's very, very busy all the time, and it's one of those things that sort of gets put off to the side and not really thought of too much. And that's really the daily reality, is that successful women such as yourselves are often just stretched with time. I find myself to be very much stretched with time. Time is a commodity. And, so I say thank you so much for joining today and making this first step in this journey today with this presentation. So our agenda today is going to be covering off understanding goals, concerns, and challenges. We're going to talk about how success sometimes comes at a price. We're going to talk about some solutions for your financial health and just getting you started on your journey, basically. And today's focus is caring for your legacy. So I am going to be talking a lot more than I normally would about estate planning, legacy planning, gift planning, and everything that comes along with that. There's going to be a much more of a focus today on those topics versus retirement planning or just general financial planning that we've talked about over the past couple of days. So if you're joining us here today for the 3rd time, today's presentation really is focused on caring for your legacy. So, as an advisor, I work with many different professionals, retirees, doctors. I mean, I've seen a lot of different cases over the years. We currently have 215 families that we work with, and all of those families have the common theme is they all have a plan with us, which means they all have a wealth plan. Now, what does a wealth plan mean? It means that we've put down the goals on paper, what it is that they want to achieve, and we've devised a plan in order to help our clients achieve those goals. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about next. So I'll just flip to the next slide here. Before going into that, I just thought I'd give some interesting statistics about women. So 78% of high net worth women work with an advisor right now. but 1/3 of those women don't really enjoy investing because it doesn't speak to their life goals. So women have been socially conditioned to believe that finance and money is not their area of competence, which is not fair, I don't think. And I think that women know way more than they give themselves credit for. How they relate to money tends to be a bit different than men. They tend to be more emotional and concerned about life choices, whereas men want to know what's the big pile, what's the big number. Women seek to feel secure and connected and fulfilled when it comes to their finances. So what does understanding your goals mean? So after we looked at those statistics, it's important to look at some of the unique challenges that women face in managing money, not in terms of the ability to handle it, but in what needs to be achieved in the end and the additional challenges that we face along the way. Today, we're going to take a look at these different scenarios and how to approach your finances, basically. In addition, women tell us that they feel more comfortable asking questions about finances and investing when there's other women in the room. So I encourage you to just ask the questions that are maybe keeping you up at night right now. Why did you join today? What is it that you want to learn? What's a key takeaway that I can provide you with today, or an aha moment for you? Is there anything that's keeping you up at night right now? Those are the kinds of things that we should be talking about right now. So a little bit of background on professional women is that women hold 57% of professional positions. This is a little bit outdated in terms of when the data was taken, but women were only holding, 12% of all board seats that are of publicly traded companies. And the list sort of goes on. It just basically shows you that there's really a minority when it comes to how women are represented in management and board type positions. But interestingly enough, 50% of small business owners are women. So, women, some are the primary breadwinners of their families. And I think it's really important that it's taken into consideration when managing finances. That just really means that you don't have the time set aside to be able to look things over. So again, kudos to you for joining today. So some of the common goals that we see are family, lifestyle, investing, retirement, as sort of this circle. So everything that you're doing is for your family. You want to maintain a lifestyle. How you're going to do it is by investing properly and, investing for your future, which would take you all the way up to retirement. And then, of course, from a legacy planning perspective, estate planning. What's going to be left over for your family for all the years that you've been working so hard for? What's going to be left over for those beneficiaries? Some of the family concerns and issues that I see a lot, elder care is the primary one. I have to tell you, it's a conversation that we're having a lot right now, and healthcare costs are just going up. So when you're thinking about estate planning, you're thinking about, how much money you're going to have to spend, perhaps sort of in your later years, because the costs of that have gone up substantially. My grandmother is in a home in Brampton, and we're actually going to be moving her to a long-term care facility. But the monthly costs of her care are a lot. And we're spending way more now, or her monthly expenses are much higher now in the stage of life that she's in now, in her 80s, than they were in her 60s and 70s. And so I like to call there's sort of 3 phases to retirement. There's the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go. So in the go-go, maybe you're spending a lot more time traveling, spending time away from wherever you're living, spending money on vacations now that the pandemic, not that it's coming to an end, but now that people are traveling again, right? And then in the sort of the slow go, clients are not really spending as much time traveling. The expenses are a little bit lower. But then in the sort of no-go phase, it's the long-term care costs are really a concern. We have a client who right now he had recently had a stroke. And so they decided that instead of putting him in a home, they were going to have someone come into the home and help manage him in the home. Well, that costs a lot of money. So we've had to redo a whole plan. We had an estate plan and a wealth plan before, but now something substantially different has happened than what was in the plan. And he requires 24-hour care, but they're doing it in the home, which is, again, just very, very costly. I have another client who is taking care of her father, and her father requires 24-hour care. Well, and he's in a home already. So there's these, PSWs that are coming in, they're doing shift work. It's not always the same person, which is not always great for him. And the costs are just astounding. So that's the one thing that I think, when you think about estate planning and planning for that sort of phase in your life, I think you want to think a little bit about how much you should be setting aside or have set aside for that period where you may need extra funds for longer term care costs. I'll just keep moving through the slides here. So, lifestyle, like what would happen if I'm not here right now? That's a question that I get a lot. So how do you plan around that? My livelihood depends on me keeping up with what I'm doing with work. That's another concern I hear a lot. How do I choose someone to make decisions for me if I can't? So powers of attorney. That's a really, really important piece of estate planning, picking your powers of attorney. So in Quebec, having a mandate. In Ontario, it's picking a power of attorney for your property and for your care. Those can be two different people. So the power of attorney for property is someone who is going to help maintain things for you from a financial perspective, or managing real estate for you, anything to do with your bank accounts, that's a power of attorney for property. Anything to do with decisions that need to be made for your care, that's to do what to do with medication, or what to do if you need help, assistance in the hospital, like all those kinds of decisions. So those are two separate powers of attorney, and they can and probably should be two separate people. It takes a very different skill set to be someone who can be a power of attorney for property than someone who would help manage your care for you. So that's really important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a few slides as well, but tax sheltering, like what is it that you could be doing right now to shelter from any taxes, upon passing? Disability income generation. So what would happen if, and this is a statistic, but you are 40 times more likely between the ages of 40 and 60 to become disabled than to pass away. So you may have a lot of life insurance to cover your liabilities, but do you have enough disability insurance to cover you if you were not able to work anymore? What would happen to the family dynamics if the household didn't have your income anymore? From a personal experience, I experienced this when I was younger. My mom was a business owner, a very successful one, and she had an advisor who didn't talk to her about the importance of buying disability insurance as a business owner. So if you are a business owner, I really encourage you to make sure that you have the proper disability insurance put in place in case something did happen, because something did happen to my mom. She was no longer able to work. She hasn't worked for several years now. She's had 6 brain surgeries. I mean, she's not been well ever since, and she was not able to sell her business to anyone and get a payday from it, because she was the person doing the work day in, day out. And so that experience really opened my eyes and showed me that it's really important to make sure that when we're planning for our clients, that everybody is covered from a risk management perspective, because you never know what's going to happen. and something could happen in the morning and just change everything for the rest of time, right? So those are some of the things to sort of think about. When we talk about investing, we talk about how much knowledge clients have. We talk about making sure that our portfolios are diversified and they're managed from a risk perspective. So diversification means that you have a portfolio that has, stocks and bonds, maybe some preferred shares, a certain percentage in fixed income and a certain percentage in equities. That asset mix decision is really based on your own risk tolerance. So how much of the swings in the markets can you, handle? Do you want to be involved in the decisions that in the day-to-day decisions of your portfolio? Do you have the time to be involved? Do you have the knowledge? Does that sort of make you shy away from things, or do you want to have all the information before you make a decision, right? And then just making sure that the portfolio is set up for as tax efficient as possible, right? Because a lot of the your income is going towards taxes, your property taxes, like there's taxes all the time. So wherever you can minimize on your tax bill, I think is really, really important. So those are just some of the common themes and issues that I see along the way, and just thought that I would put in a chart here for you. So when we talk about retirement planning, we talk about, do I have enough to retire on? Well, in order to figure that out, you need to make sure that you have a budget. What's your budget? What's your monthly, what are your monthly expenses right now? And making sure that you have saved enough to cover those monthly expenses when you do start drawing down from your portfolio. So some of the common issues I see is, making sure that you have an RSP growth strategy in place. This year, of course, is a little bit different because, now the markets have changed drastically this year. We're seeing double-digit negative returns in most asset classes right now. And inflation is at basically a 40-year high at 9.1%. So interest rates are going up. The costs of living have gone up substantially. And so it's really important to make sure that, you've set yourself up in your portfolio to be defensive against everything that's happening right now. Of course, this is all going to work itself out as it always has historically. It's just going to take time. Some of the other issues I see is, income splitting. Like, how do you income split in retirement? Long-term care, which we talked about, and the rising costs of healthcare. And then maybe becoming financially dependent on your own children down the road if there haven't been enough savings built up. Those are some of the themes that I see. So I have a slide in here which I thought would just touch upon really quickly. So how to avoid the 9 biggest retirement planning mistakes. So, you want to build out a worst case scenario financial and retirement plan for yourself. You want to make sure that you're going to outlive your wealth. And that's what the estate planning conversation comes in place, right? Ensuring that your nest egg is going to last you more than 30 years. How to maximize the government of Canada, or in Quebec, the Quebec pension plan benefits. So you want to create a consistent and a stable, reliable income stream for yourself in retirement. And if you're already in retirement, then of course, this already, where your sources of retirement income are coming from. You want to make sure that you're minimizing and reducing your taxes, leading up to and during retirement, and building out a tax efficient portfolio, which I've mentioned a couple of times. You want to make sure that you're reducing any fees that you're paying or minimizing any costs that you have to keep more of your savings in your pocket. I always recommend that it's best to work with an advisor who is a fiduciary. That is someone who has a legal responsibility to, make sure that your funds are being managed in the best way possible. You don't really want to miss out too much on the growth when it comes to the upside in equity and fixed income markets. want to focus on improving your bottom line results. And then the other piece of this, and I put this in here just because it looks like we could be entering a 2008 type market environment with this possible recession. So, protecting and preserving your portfolio is really, really important, because if you're in retirement right now or close to retirement, your time horizon isn't as long as it was when you were building up the funds for your retirement. So how are you going to withdraw money from your portfolio over the next year or two to prevent yourself from taking too many losses, since now we have, double-digit negative returns that we're seeing right now. So those are some of the things to just sort of think about and talk to your advisor about, and make sure that you have a plan in place. So I have a couple of statistics that I thought I would share. Despite obviously some of these numerous advances, women continue to face these unique challenges that can impact our ability to realize these longer term goals and can put them at a greater level of financial risk down the road, which is why we're having this conversation today. So more highly educated than men. So, university graduates are higher. 31% of Canadian households, the woman is the primary breadwinner. So that was my mom many years ago, and control 1.1 trillion in personal wealth. So that's a huge number. And I think that's really important to think of. Some of the biggest concerns that women are facing today is the caregiving burden, right? Caring for your family and for your loved ones. They can take up a lot of limited time, especially if you're working. The costs of healthcare and long-term care costs have gone up substantially. And then the fact is that sometimes there might be a financial dependency on others, not having saved enough in retirement to maintain the lifestyle that you want, because maybe you didn't have the time to put towards looking at things and making it so that it's going to work down the road. So just a couple of notes on the caregiving burden. So it's really, it's in our nature to nurture. So, it just really takes up a lot of our time if you are experiencing this right now, and especially if you're taking care of yourself, right? You're taking care of your kids, you're taking care of your parents. It can really maybe put a strain on yourself, right? So, and sometimes we can have a bit of stress when it comes to the finances, and so on and so forth. I see a question that's come through is, how can we tell if an advisor has a fiduciary duty? Is there a title that will indicate this? Yes, that's a good question. If the person's title is a portfolio manager, or associate portfolio manager, or in French, it's a gestionnaire de portefeuille, then that would be someone who has a fiduciary duty to manage the investments. So we talked about the rising costs of healthcare. These are just some information. I mean, right now, for my grandmother, we're spending over $7,000 a month on all of her care. So it's just really expensive. So it's just something to make sure that you're planning for if you think that that's going to be something that will happen along the way. So many women fear that, this fear of being a bag lady down the road, right? So because women are living longer, like longevity is a huge piece of this. So you need additional savings because you may be living for an extra 5 or 10 years. Time spent away from working because of caregiving, if you have small children, or even if you need to leave the workforce to help care for your parents. I had a client who that happened to very recently. And then both of her parents ended up passing away within a few years, but she wasn't able to work and take care of her parents at the same time. So that put a huge stress on her. And then, having less discretionary income available to save. And that right now is a very true thing, because inflation is so high, we're going to the fill up our gas tanks and it's costing a lot more than it used to. We're going to the grocery store and the food is costing a lot more than it used to. So having less income available to, not less income, but less funds available to save right now is a big challenge. So I just thought that was sort of an overview of, common concerns that women are facing today. So caregiving burden, rising, healthcare costs is a big one, being financially dependent on others. So how do you not do that, right? And so it just maybe sometimes feel like the stacks, the decks are stacked against women. But now that we understand some of these common concerns, let's address some of the issues at hand here. So, some of the concerns, so risk management is a big one, and I'm going to talk about that. Saving for financial goals, and then legacy planning I'm going to spend quite a few minutes on because today's presentation is really to focus on legacy planning. So in terms of risk management, it's really important to set aside some emergency funds. So have an emergency fund, right? An emergency fund is, depending on what kind of employment you have right now, if it's, hard or easy to find a new job, you probably want to have 4 months of net income saved up in an emergency fund in case something were to happen. I think you want to understand your employee benefits. And also when you retire, how do those employee benefits continue? Do they continue? Do you need to look at setting something up for yourself out in a private way? And, making sure that you have the appropriate insurances in place, in case something were to happen, right? So that's a little bit about risk management as an overview. So when I talk about living benefits, I mean, making sure that you have life insurance to cover off any debts that you have. So if you have a mortgage, making sure that you have life insurance to cover that off if your family is depending on you for the income that you're providing. Making sure that you have property and liability insurance, making sure that you have disability income insurance if you're younger than 65. And really mostly important to have your own disability plan if you're a business owner. And then long-term care insurance is a big topic nowadays as well with clients. Should they buy it? Should they not? And it's a conversation that we're having with many people right now just because of the rising costs of long-term care. So in terms of saving for financial goals, I think it's really important that you know what your net worth is and what your cash flow is. So you want to see where you're at right now. So maybe just do a little check-in with yourself and write down, what is it that I own minus what I owe on those, whether it's properties, I'm not sure. And, how much do you have saved up in your investment balances? And, how much of that right now from a cash flow perspective, like how much of your cash flow is going into saving and investing for your future? And do you know how much you should be saving to reach any of the goals that you might have? And then just in terms of defining goals, what is it that you want to achieve? Do you want to achieve like a dream retirement, or do you want to achieve a legacy? You want to have a legacy after you're gone. You want to make sure that everything is set up in place so that it's all covered off when you are gone. And then I think it's really important to save and invest in your future. So, taking that and having an action plan around it. So just making sure that you're doing something and you've got an action plan for the year, I think is just really important. So just in terms of saving for financial goals, the sort of the step one is, know your net worth and cash flow, which we talked about, review your assets and liabilities, the in and out flow of money that you have, and then making adjustments as you can. Tips on managing cash flow that I have are, keep a spending record, reduce the amounts that are going out for things that are not necessarily needed if possible, examine fees and the rates of your credit cards that you have, consolidate any debt that you have. And I think that's really important right now. Make sure that if you do have some debt outstanding, that it's consolidated. As interest rates keep going up, the cost of debt are going to go higher and higher and higher. And then just taking into consideration the tax implications of investing in the different products that are available and the different types of accounts. So, you know, an RSP and a tax-free savings account, those accounts, they grow tax-free. So they are really, really handy. And once you are retired or you turn 71, turning 72, you would convert your RSP, which is your retirement savings plan, into what's called a retirement income fund. Well, how is that going to impact your tax situation? Because it's a minimum amount that needs to be withdrawn every single year. We can talk about that in a few slides too. And, you know, just making sure that you understand that these accounts do grow tax-free, but a non-registered account doesn't grow tax-free. So just, you know, making sure that you know where the tax bills are going. And then just in terms of the second step to saving for financial goals is goals represent achievements and they keep you motivated, right? So you should have some short-term goals, so less than 3 years, and some longer-term goals, so three years or more. And then taking time to determine what it is that you really want to achieve and write it down. And keep it in a place, maybe have a book, like a notebook that you have, that maybe you can write down some of the things that you want to achieve as a goal. One really interesting book that I read was Wanting What You Want. And the person who wrote the book said that every single day for a year, he wrote down every single morning in a journal one thing that he really wanted. And it could have been a crazy idea, but he wrote it down every single day. And I think it's a really nice thing to just try and do, to set yourself and also just see, to try and, you know, make it more achievable. Writing it down will just show you, you know, where you're at today and how can you get to the sort of to the next point. So the third step is making sure that you're paying yourself first. So having a savings plan, continue making payments to your savings when the debt is eliminated. It's important to carve out savings for retirement, though, especially as you're getting closer, because if you're not going to be earning an income anymore, you're going to need somewhere to draw on those funds. So that's just really important. And maybe it's also, you know, having a monthly setup, like a monthly plan set up, like a monthly contribution to any of these accounts. And if you have some debt outstanding, making sure that you have a plan to pay off that debt. And again, if you do have some credit card debt, or you have a line of credit and a mortgage, taking the time to speak with your advisor or your mortgage broker, whoever that is, to look at consolidating debt right now, as interest rates are increasing right now. And then we already talked about tax deductibility of the RSPs and, you know, the tax deferred growth and the compounding that can really provide you with. So, so those are just some of the things to think about. So in terms of legacy planning, what I thought we would do is spend a little bit of time on this. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them through the chat. So when it comes to legacy planning, it's really important to have a family meeting. So have a meeting with family to share the thoughts, basically your thoughts and your wishes and what your goals are. So you really want to have a family meeting about the estate plan. So at the core of an effective and successful estate plan is communicating among everyone involved. You want to share your thoughts, you want to share your wishes, and you want to share your goals that are to be achieved by this estate plan. And you want to make it possible to give the beneficiaries an understanding of the intention on which the plan is based so that there are no surprises. I think it's really important to update your wealth plan right now to reflect the current estate values that are going to be there. And if you're outside of Quebec, I think it's really important that you make sure that the right beneficiaries are designated on your investment accounts. And make sure that you have a contingent beneficiary as well, so that that doesn't have to go through probate. Because in Ontario, we have probate. And if it has to go through an estate, then there will be probate, which is that administration fee. And I'll keep going here. So this is a very in-depth slide, so bear with me. I'm also getting another question here. So a few more questions. Is there a recommended site similar to RateMD for financial advisor ratings, or how can we tell if our financial advisor is good or not? That's a good question. Let me think about that for a second. My advisor's title is financial planner, not portfolio manager. Does this mean they may not have fiduciary duty obligation? Yeah, no, I mean, a financial planner would not have fiduciary duty. A financial planner usually works in a bank branch setting, and a financial planner would usually only be able to sell certain products like mutual funds. They wouldn't have the license to be able to sell, stocks, bonds on a discretionary basis. So no, that person would not have a fiduciary duty. In terms of, is there like a RateMD for financial advisors? I don't think that there is. If you are working with an IROC licensed advisor, though, you could go on IROC, so IIROC.ca. A financial planner would not be IROC licensed, though, but just for the benefit of everybody else. You could go on IROC.ca and you could look up the advisor's name, and you could see if there's ever been any complaints against that advisor or any findings against that advisor. So that might be handy to look at if you were feeling concerned and you were working with someone who's licensed with IROC, but a financial planner wouldn't be. So there's not like a rate your financial planner like, doctors, but that site would have good information about if there's ever been a complaint against the advisor that that you want to work with or that you're working with right now. Is there an inheritance tax in Canada? No, there is not. In the United States, there is. What if there was a divorce and you have to get a job after 60 years old? The pension will be very limited. So how can planning be made without investing for retirement? It's a good question. I think it's you just sort of have to do what you can at that point. The pension would be limited, but you would have to look at the employer and how their pension works. And you could also continue working past 65 if you wanted, if you were happy with the employment that you were, that you had, or that you have right now. I don't think there's sort of like a limit as to when, from an age perspective. I think they've stopped that, but I'm not 100% sure. And then just save whatever you can on the side to try and build up any extra funds for when you won't be working. Okay, I think I've covered the questions that came in. Okay. And should a power of attorney not be related? Not necessarily. You can appoint family members to be your power of attorney, as long as it's someone who has the skill sets to be able to care for you from a property perspective or a care perspective. If you wanted to hire someone who is not related, I would look at hiring like a trust company. So all of the banks have trust companies, and same thing with having an executor. So I don't know if you've ever seen how long the executor task list is. but I think there's like over 70 things that the executor has to do when one passes away. So there are a lot of advantages to having a corporate trustee, hiring a trust company like a BMO Trust, for example, to be the executor of your will. And also, if you didn't have someone in your immediate circle that you trusted for a power of attorney perspective, then having them act for you and making sure that they know all of your wishes from both property and care. Those are really, really important. I think it's also really important to make sure that you have an estate file. So just going back to my slide here, making sure that you know, like that you have a place or like a document basically that outlines where all of your accounts are. Do you have a safety box at one of the banks? Do you have the bank accounts listed? Do you have the investment accounts listed? Any insurance policies listed? Making sure that everything is in one place for the executor to know that they're not missing anything if something does happen to you. You want to make sure that you have a plan for your digital assets too, and even like your social media, right? Do you have an Instagram account, a Facebook account, a LinkedIn account? What is someone to do with all of those accounts upon passing? Making sure that you have a will that works. So making sure that nothing in the will could be contested, making sure that you don't have percentages in there for charities. So one case that we saw a couple of years ago was that one of our clients said, okay, the most of my estate is going to go to my 4 kids. And then the balance of it is going to these charities. And how they did the balance was 25% to this charity, 25 to another, and 25 and 25. The problem with that was that it was leaving it open for the charities to get that person's estate audited, which will cost money and will take a lot of time to settle that person's estate because they had percentages listed instead of direct contribution amounts or having them in quarters. And like, it's one of these things that kind of baffled me. I was like, what do you mean that could happen? Making sure that you don't have any minors listed as getting funds directly, making sure that they're going in trust for the minors so that no other outside party has to get involved. Like in Ontario, it's the children's fund that gets involved. If a minor is listed directly, then an outside organization has to come in. That's going to cost money. So there's all of this takes away from the pot of money that you want to go to your beneficiaries or to charities or so on and so forth. If you are a business owner, making sure that you have a secondary will. If you have a corporate account, making sure you have a secondary will for those, really, really important so that it does not flow through your personal estate because all of that can cost more money. If you have a family pet, what happens to that pet if something happens to you? And then I really think you need to have a plan for the estate taxes. So if there's a large sum of money that's going to be going to the CRA upon passing, well, really, really important to take a look at that and see, is there an insurance policy that I could buy to cover this off for my beneficiaries so that they inherit more, if that's possible for you? Is there a shared family property is what I see a lot. A family cottage really tends to be quite the point of contention for families. So who's going to inherit the family cottage? If it's everybody inheriting it, how are they going to pay for that family cottage? Is there a big unrealized gain on that family cottage? Is there going to be fighting amongst siblings for the cottage? Or are they going to have to sell it? And then there's going to be a big tax bill. Or can one person buy it? Like making sure that you have a plan for any shared family property, really important. Trusts are a great way to have, estate planning around trusts. That's a whole other topic. There's spousal trusts, there's testamentary trusts. Trust can be really handy from an estate planning perspective and from a tax planning perspective too, but also just from a protection perspective. What does estate planning for a blended family look like? If you're newly remarried, but you have kids from a previous marriage, what does that look like? Do your kids inherit all of the money, or do you want your new spouse to inherit a certain amount? Making sure that you're having those conversations, making sure that the kids are aware of what that looks like, and making sure that there's a plan around that. When my grandmother, before my grandmother was put into had to go into this home, she has Alzheimer's and dementia now. But before that, she was married, and it was her third marriage, but it was her husband's second marriage. And they had a whole contract in place about how she was supposed to get 50% of the increase in the home that they bought together, plus the money that she had gotten out of it. But that was only if they were getting a divorce. It was not if and when he was passing away. So unfortunately, after many arguments, hiring a lawyer, like it was a really messy thing, because something was not worded by saying not just divorce, but upon passing, she, missed out on a lot. So making sure that that's all set up in place. If you do have a blended family, like you wouldn't want what happened to my grandmother happen for you either, right? And again, the advantages of using a corporate trustee are, if you've ever seen the executor task list, you would understand why I'm saying this, or if you've ever been an executor yourself, it will be very time consuming for whoever you appoint to be your executor. Do you think that person has the time and the capability to do it? If not, then look at hiring a corporate trustee, because the person that you appoint as your executor could take up to a 5% compensation of your total estate. And a corporate trustee's fees are usually less than 5% of the total estate. So there would even be a cost savings there. If the person obviously didn't take 5%, then sure, it would be less. But do you really want that person to do all of that for you upon passing? There was another question that was asked, which was, are gifts to your kids taxable? In Canada, they are not. In the US, that's a different story. How do you avoid paying the taxes for your home or rental properties before you die so that kids don't pay taxes? Is that interesting? How do you do that? The taxes on your primary residence are tax-free. There's no taxes that get paid. Like if you go to sell your home right now and you have a big unrealized gain on it, the principal residence is tax-free when you sell it. So you don't have to worry about that. For rental properties, you could have it joint with your kids, and then you could somehow pay some of those taxes up front. But I would speak to your accountant about that to see if it makes sense or not, just depending on how much you paid for those rental properties versus what they would be worth right now. Because once you do make it joint with someone else, if they're not a spouse, because a spouse to spouse rollover is tax-free, but a mom or dad rollover to kids is not tax-free. So you'd be basically saying, okay, here's the fair market value today. I'm going to pay taxes on it now. And then the growth from here on out would then be tax-free to the kids. So I would speak to your accountant to see if that is a strategy that would make sense for you. So I'll just keep going here. We can keep the questions coming. They're very good questions. Just had a couple of other thoughts on estate planning. So, making sure that you have a plan, right? Are you going to be downsizing or buying a second property in the near future? And what does that look like to you? And if you are doing that and this is your final property, then maybe it makes sense to have it joint with your kids. But then are your kids married? And if they're married, making sure that there's a contract in place that this is their money that's going to be inherited and not going into joint with their spouse, because that's something that concerns a lot of my clients today. at the age of 71, once you turn 72, this big sort of tax bomb that I see a lot where clients haven't really, we have, obviously we're doing planning with clients a lot, but if it's a new client and they're about to start withdrawing money from their RIF, the retirement income fund, not knowing that could add so much to their income every year, having a plan around that is really important. So, estate planning, when was the last time your will and your powers of attorney were updated? And again, the use of a corporate executor versus a family member or friend. Trust planning, we talked about, so family trusts, spousal trusts, and alter ego trusts. And then gift planning, one of the big themes I saw from the pandemic was clients wanting to make sure that their estate plan was updated. And when we were going through a lot of this with clients, what we discovered was that a lot of clients were passionate about making sure they had a legacy. So we've had a lot of donor advised funds set up in the past couple of years. And that's when you can contribute basically shares that have appreciated a lot in value that you wouldn't want to sell because there's too large of a capital gain on, right? And so moving that into a charitable account that you still have control over, but basically you're contributing these shares, you're getting a tax receipt for it, which is great. And then the money is in this donor advised fund that's being managed for you as your other accounts are being managed. And you get to basically pick which charities you want to contribute to every year. And that would continue on even after you're gone. So there's a legacy there, and you can call it, your name, family foundation, or maybe you're doing it for someone who has passed already. So the person that I used to work with when I first moved to Toronto, Chris Shatilla, he passed away from cancer. And now there's a memorial fund set up in his name where his family members can make donations on his behalf on things that they're passionate about and charities that he would have wanted to support. And even making they've even made up a scholarship for a school that he attended in Montreal in his name. So things like that. Maybe the McGill Women's Alumni Association scholarship fund is something that you're passionate about, and you want to make sure that there's a scholarship that goes to a female going to McGill every year. That's something that you could set up in your legacy planning, gift planning conversation with your advisor. So I'll just go through this really quickly since we only have a few moments left here, but I can't stress it enough, the value of professional advice, it will pay for itself in spades. Someone who's a financial professional can help you save and invest regularly, have more money on hand, use use the tax advantage plans and investments, benefit from government sponsored programs like an RESP, for example, create, monitor, and adjust your plan, basically making sure that you have a plan in place, and then engage other experts in their fields as required. So for our clients, whenever we do a wealth plan, we're reviewing their will and their powers of attorney for them. We have an internal lawyer that we use, that we send their legal documents to. That person analyzes them. It's a part of being a client. The cost is covered from being a client. And that person makes recommendations for them to take back to their lawyer, which is great because then you're not spending, how many hours that a lawyer is going to take to do all of that with you. You're saving money that way, right? A tax expert. So we've got cross-border tax experts. We have an in-house tax expert that will basically look at everything and say, here's what I think we should do. Should we have a trust? Should we have this? Should we have that? And make recommendations so that you're not spending too much time with your accountant that might cost you a lot of money. So things like that. Financial planning basically just really keeps you on track. And again, you want to have a plan. You want to identify and prioritize what your financial goals are. You want to ensure that you have short-term and long-term goals, a budget, and just, what you're doing today is basically just becoming more knowledgeable in your personal finance in personal finance, right? How often should the will be updated? If there's a major life change, that should be recognized in the will. And I would have it updated every 5 years, 5 to 7 years, just to make sure that things are as you wish. And again, power of attorney as well, as that person still fit to do the job that I'm asking them to do? Has their life changed substantially? My grandmother appointed me as her power of attorney of property and also to be her executor. She did that before I had 4 small children. And of course, I'm still doing it for her. I would never say no to my grandmother. I love her dearly. So of course I'm doing it for her. But, you know, it is time consuming. And I know that when I am going to be her executor, I know that that will be time consuming as well. So just making sure that the person that you're appointing has the ability to do it and the time, because there is a lot that you're asking that person to do. And this is just a couple of points on the benefits of having, you know, consolidating your assets all in one place, is that it saves you time and it reduces your statements. And again, what I said at the beginning is that time is a commodity. So working with someone that understands you, working with someone who can make sure that your portfolio is diversified, make sure that you have the right plan in place. You know, I think it's just really important to be working with someone who is the right fit for you. So just in summary, so increasingly women are becoming more educated, business owners taking on senior management roles. So again, time is the commodity, and all these sort of common concerns that are still there: caregiving, rising costs, financial dependency on others. Some solutions for overcoming these concerns are risk management, saving for financial goals, whether that's retirement, estate planning, legacy planning, and then legacy planning, right, which we talked a lot about. So will, powers of attorney, second will if you're a business owner, making sure that you've planned for digital assets, a family pet, making sure that you have the right beneficiaries designated on your accounts in case something did happen. If you're a business owner, do you have disability insurance? That's a really important point that I'll hammer home. And just really, I think for everyone here, the next steps are getting you started on your finances. So we covered a lot of information today. I hope you had a couple of aha moments. I hope I was able to answer all the questions you had, but talk to someone for help, right? Develop a plan with that person. If you're concerned at all about your portfolio, or is your portfolio diversified enough? Do I have the right plan in place? You know, these are all concerns that are okay to have. And I think it's important to speak to someone about them if those are the things that are keeping you up at night right now. I do have a survey, which is in the chat right now. It's a SurveyMonkey link. I encourage you to go and fill it out. My contact information is here. I can be reached at 416-928-3323. And my email is keeley.simpson@nbpcd.com. If you would like any information or more information from the presentation today, have any follow-up questions, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to discuss further with you or help you figure things out. That's what I'm here for. I guess my final point would be that I don't know who anyone here is. So if you do have any questions or concerns for me, please reach out to me directly, because I won't be able to reach out to you. So again, I hope you enjoyed today's session. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you to the McGill Women's Alumni Association for having me here today. And I really appreciate your time, and I hope that this helps you along the way. Thank you so much. Have a great day.